James Hardie HardiePlank siding is a colourful and versatile weatherboard that offers the texture and natural beauty of timber while delivering the maintenance-free durability of new generation ECC fibre cement. It can be installed horizontally, vertically or diagonally, providing freedom and flexibility. Sealed, primed and factory painted, HardiePlank siding arrives at your building site ready for fast and easy installation. This short instructional video is designed to show you all of the key points that you need to consider in order to install HardiePlank successfully. HardiePlank itself is an 8mm thick fibre cement plank that's designed for both internal and external use on new builds and renovation projects. HardiePlank siding is available in two textures, cedar and smooth. A full length of HardiePlank is 3.6 metres long, 180mm wide and weighs 7.5 kilos. There are approximately 2 per square metre. HardiePlank siding comes with a protective plastic film which needs to be removed and thrown away into the correct recycling bin on site before installation. Although HardiePlank itself looks like wood, it's actually made of fibre cement, which consists of sand, cement, fibres and are bonded together with water. This means that it outperforms wood in every area. HardieTrim is a 25mm thick fibre cement siding profile and it's designed to be used around corners, doors and windows. A full length of HardieTrim is 3.6 metres long and is available in two widths, 90mm and 140mm. It weighs between 10 kilos and 15 kilos depending upon the width. For an alternative finish, they have an internal corner, which is this one here, which is shaped like a W, and an external corner, which is this one here, which is more like a box profile. Both of these are made from an aluminium sheet. James Hardie provide various tools and products that you will need in order to complete your project successfully. You can see here that I've got them laid out on the floor. The first one is the Hardie blade, which comes in various sizes and is supplied with a bore reducing washer to fit a variety of manufacturer's tools. A Hardie guillotine that you'll need for cutting the plank, Colour Plus touch-up paint and EPDM tape, which also comes in various sizes. Like I'd mentioned previously, you can use a circular saw to cut both plank and trim, but make sure that it has been installed with a Hardie blade first. These are also the other tools and pieces of equipment that you're going to use in order to complete your project successfully. You've got a jigsaw, a first fixed nail gun that you're going to use for installing the plank, a second fixed nail gun that you're going to use for installing the trim. Up here, you've got a ventilation strip, and then finally, you've got a waterproof membrane sheet that you need to fit, but that will be dependent upon the specification of your build. Make sure that you check with your site engineer before doing this. Products must be stored flat and kept dry. Always try to keep them away from the influences of bad weather. Any product stored outside must have additional waterproofing. Don't just rely upon the product's wrapper for protection against water and dust. Wet products must never be installed. Only take what you are about to install and replace the cover immediately. If at any point when stored HardiePlank gets wet, you need to ensure that it's allowed to dry out thoroughly before installation. When carrying HardiePlank, the correct way to carry it is on its edge. If carried flat, it will damage both the structure and the paint finish. Like all building products, HardiePlank and HardieTrim produce dust when cut with a power saw. This is why we would always recommend that you cut them outside in a well-ventilated space and wear the required safety equipment. This includes an FFP2 respirator, safety goggles and protective gloves. There are several ways in which you can cut HardiePlank. However, we would only recommend two ways. One of which is using a Hardie blade in a circular saw, or like I'm going to show you here, using the Hardie guillotine, as this is the most efficient way and produces the least amount of dust. Simple and straightforward to do. Place the plank in, butt it up against the guide. The blade itself is not sharp, and therefore when using it you will not have any health and safety issues. And push straight down. There are two sizes of batten to be used when installing HardiePlank. As you can see here, we've got a 50 by 50 mm batten. This should be used when attaching to block work, or a 50 by 25 mm batten, and this should be used when attaching to timber frame. This is due to the length of the nails that will be used when installing HardiePlank. Battens should be spaced at a maximum of 600 mm, and this is in accordance with current building regulations. However, this can be reduced down to 500 or even 400 mm in boundary and high wind load areas, but make sure to seek advice from the site engineer before doing this. Battens should be fixed with the bottom ends at least 150 mm above the ground. Once you've got your battens up, you're going to install your EPDM tape. Your EPDM tape is designed to replace the use of mastic. Because the EPDM tape is designed to stop the penetration of water at the joints between plank and trim, you first need to make sure that it's installed in the correct position. In order to do this, I'm going to show you now, you need to take a piece of trim and line it up in its correct position, and then you need to draw a pencil line on your battens. Now, once you've done that, you're going to take the EPDM tape and it's going to straddle that pencil line, and you're going to attach it up here with the staple gun. So, take the staple gun, straddle the pencil line, put two staples in the top. Now, let the tape itself run all the way down to the bottom. Make sure it's nice and straight and vertical, and then proceed to go down the EPDM tape, putting in another few staples as you go. Now, once you've done that, as I said previously, if you find any of these staples aren't quite driven in properly, you can just tap them home using a hammer, making sure they sit nice and flush. Once you've done that, you need to take a knife down to the bottom and cut it to length. Then need to fix the last few staples. And then tap them home. You need to ensure that the EPDM tape is fitted like this at all points on the building where there are joints between plank and trim, making sure to pay particular attention around windows and doors. Having installed your EPDM tape, your next step is to install your ventilation strip. Now for this we're going to be using the second fix nail gun, which requires using safety glasses, so we'll stick those on first. Now when you're installing this, it's dependent upon the thickness of the battens as to how much you trim off of your ventilation strip. Your ventilation strip is there to stop flies and wasps and rodents getting in underneath the product, as there needs to be a minimum of a 20mm ventilation gap in behind the HardiePlank. In order to do this, you're going to obviously chop it to the right length that you need, having cut off enough so as this sits back flush against the wall. You're going to take it in. We're putting this one on the bottom first. You can see that it sits nice and flush against the wall. You're going to take your nail gun, put it in against the ventilation strip and drive the nail home. When installing the ventilation strip, we need to make sure that we pay particular attention to install it correctly above doors and windows, as with the EPDM tape. So we're going to put this one in up here now, up there, hold it in place, again with the nail gun, drive it home. So now we've got above the window done, we're going to do below the window. We're going to put the ventilation strip in under there, make sure that it's back flat against the wall, and again drive it home with the nail gun. Like so. A common problem area on most builds is the gable end. We're going to show you with this scale model here how to avoid this from happening. You need to ensure that your battens have got a raking cut along the gable, leaving a 20mm gap. You need to take your ventilation strip and, as you have done previously, cut it down to size in order to ensure that it sits flush against the wall. You also need to cut an angle on the top of the ventilation strip, so when you place it in place, it sits perfectly. Also, this is a good time to point out that you may need to install extra battens, also with a raking cut, to pick up the loose end of the plank in order to stop it from flapping. Once you've done this, you're going to use the same nail gun that you have done previously in order to fix the ventilation strip in place. Having now installed your EPDM tape and your ventilation strip, the next step that you'll be looking to do is make a corner profile. For this, you'll be needing some HardieTrim, a nail gun, tape measure and some safety glasses, like whenever you're using a nail gun. When cutting your trim to length, you need to ensure that you cut it 20mm longer than the length of your battens. So you've got 10mm sticking out the top and 10mm sticking out the bottom. So we're just going to put our tape measure on there now. Measure the length and then obviously make a note of that, and then as you can see here, we've got 20mm longer than what our battens are. Before fixing HardieTrim, it's really important that you set your nail gun to the correct depth. With these examples you can see that we've got an overdriven nail here. This is okay, but not too much. We don't want too deep a nail driven, because a slight overdriven nail we can fill. An underdriven nail here, this is what we don't want. The nail head is sitting too proud of the final finished surface, and this is unacceptable. This, in the perfect world, is what we're looking for, whereby the nail head is sitting completely flush with the final finished surface of the trim. So what we're going to do is, we've got these 4 pieces laid out here on the floor. You're going to be needing to use a scrap piece of HardieTrim when you're on site to do this. The first bit and the third bit that you can see here are the bits that we're going to be using. We're going to be standing this one up on edge. We'll be standing this one up, so if you're on site this would be your scrap piece, and we're going to be using this as a guide. You want to lay them out so as they're parallel, like tram lines. And then you're going to take this third piece and stand it up on top. Now that we have all of that set up, we're going to be putting our first nail in. So I've got a little mark here that's 12.5mm in, and then this mark here that's 25mm down. So that's where our first nail is going to be going in. Then from this point we would be measuring 400mm back this way, all the way down. And our next mark is going to be going here, and finally last nail, last 400 going in there. Then we're going to come back, safety glasses on, make sure it's flush, line it up, drive the first one home. Make sure that we pull it in so as it's nice and flush. Look where our next mark is. Having put that nail in there, you would then carry on down the whole length of the trim, making sure that you put a nail in every 400 millimeters. Final thing to remember is that you need to have a nail at the bottom of the trim, the same as you do at the top, 25 millimeters in. Once you've put all of those nails in and you've actually made your corner, you then take your Colour Plus touch-up paint and ensure that all of the cut ends of the trim are painted before putting it on the wall. When fixing your corner trims, there are a few things that you need to be aware of. Firstly, as you place it up and put it in position, you need to be 10 millimeters down from the underside of the soffit. You also need to make sure that you put a level on there and that the trim itself is actually plumb in both directions. So we've got this way and then obviously this way. Once we've done this, we're going to take our nail gun and we're going to basically fix the trim in place where we've already nailed. So for me, handily, it's right in front of me. So we're going to be going straight in here and in place. Then we're going to work our way down. Fix that one there. Fix this one here. Down towards the bottom. Then back up to this one at the top. And in. As you can see, we've taken the plastic film off of these corner trims, but we would recommend that you leave that on there. It's just going to give it a little bit more protection when you're on site, and it's going to stop it getting scuffed and marked when it is on the building. If you're going to do that though, we would very, very much recommend that you take it out of the joint here, so as it doesn't get pinched in there and you end up with a frayed plastic line down here. Finally, once you have put these nails in, you need to come around to this side of the trim, put your first two marks in here, fix it, and then put your fixing nails in all the way down at every 400 millimeters. If you're using metal trims, you have to remove the protective plastic layer that you can see here before installing the product. When you do install the product into the corner, you don't have to use the EPDM tape like you would do on the fibre cement. Also, like with the fibre cement, you still have to leave a 10mm overhang at the top and a 10mm overhang at the bottom. There are several ways of installing HardieTrim around doors and windows. Here you can see we've got one option. First things first though, before starting any of this, make sure that you install the 100mm EPDM tape around the corner of the window and tucked into the window reveal. After doing that, you want to aim to make a goal post, so you cut yourself two uprights and a crossbar across the top. The uprights themselves, make sure you overlap them ever so slightly past the window reveal. It's vital to make sure that the ventilation strip is in the top of the window. And then the window reveal, it can be finished in a number of ways, but this will depend upon the architect's specification. Before starting to plank, you need to install a 30mm starting strip. This provides the correct amount of kick out for the first plank. To do this, you can do what we've done here, which is cut a 30mm strip off of a HardiePlank, place it down at the bottom of your batten so as it's flush with the bottom of the batten and also your ventilation strip. You need to use a first fix nail gun in order to secure it in place. If at any point the nail underdrives like we've got here, you can just tap it in with a hammer. before starting each work session, it's really important that you set your nail gun to the right depth. A common problem with fixing HardiePlank is that nail guns either overdrive or underdrive the nails. We've got a little example set out here for you so as we can show you what we don't want and what we do want. This here is an underdriven nail. As you can see, the nail head hasn't driven far enough into the product and is sitting slightly proud of the surface of the plank. At the top here, we've got a massively overdriven nail where it's punched right through the surface of the plank and it's gone too far in. This is not what we want. What we've got here is the perfect finish where the nail head is sitting completely flush with the plank, and this is going to do the perfect job of holding the plank in position and will eliminate any problems. Before installing the plank, you need to ensure that you've obviously cut it to the correct length. After cutting it to the correct length, you need to make sure that you paint the ends that you've cut with the Colour Plus touch-up paint. You should always install the plank using a first fix nail gun and obviously wear your safety goggles. Now there are a couple of common errors that always take place when fitting the plank, and they are that when you put it on, it tends to either oversail the bottom of the trim, or it comes slightly short of the trim and you end up seeing the ventilation strip underneath. You need to ensure that that's nice and flush with the bottom of the trim and that you've left a very small expansion gap between the plank and the trim, about a credit card thickness there. Once you've got the plank in position and you've got the correct gap between the plank and the trim, and the plank is sitting flush with the bottom of the trim, you obviously then need to use a spirit level in order to check that the plank is level. Put the spirit level on top, check the bubble, make sure the bubble is central, and then you can fix the plank in place. When installing the plank, you want to be using your first fix nail gun to put a nail between 20 and 25 mil down from the top edge. In order to do that, obviously, put our glasses on, take the nail gun, and in here, like so. After fitting your first piece of plank, in order to ensure that you get the correct overlap, you need to measure 150 millimeters up from the top edge of the first plank, make a pencil mark, and this will ensure that you get a 30 millimeter overlap on your original plank. Go along and repeat this on all of your battens before installing your second piece of plank. Once you've made your marks, obviously you'll then take your plank, line up the top edge of your plank with the marks that you've made. There. Make sure that you leave the correct gap at the end. Take your nail gun, again 20 to 25 millimeters down, and fix it in place. When nailing near the edge of a plank, you need to make sure that you have a minimum of 12 millimeters in from the edge in order to prevent the edge of the board from blowing out. Now that we've got the second plank on, you can really see in behind how the ventilation gap works. An important detail that I want to show you now is how to install HardiePlank correctly over an expansion gap in the blockwork. As you can see here on a scale model that we've got rigged up, we've got our expansion gap in our blockwork, and you need to ensure that the battens that you're fixing the plank to are installed correctly. The number one thing that's most important is that the expansion gap is carried through in the planking. When installing the plank over the expansion gap, important things to remember are putting the nails in the correct positions. This right hand plank needs to be fixed to the right hand batten, and the left hand plank only fixed to the left hand batten, not the right hand batten as well, because that's what allows the plank to move over the expansion gap. So this right hand plank that we've got here, we're going to fix it like we normally would. And then fixing the left-hand plank, obviously making sure that we've measured up. We've got our little black marks here, 150mm. Line that up correctly. Make sure that we're leaving this gap, which is our expansion gap. And now this will be fixed into this batten and not this batten. Final thing to remember is that the expansion gap can either be left with the EPDM tape showing like we've got here, or this can be filled with mastic. The final thing that I want to show you is how to deal with a joint. A joint will occur on every build, and it's knowing how to deal with them correctly that makes all the difference. First thing you want to do is measure your marks 150mm up from your leading edge of your final plank like you would normally do, but make sure that your mark goes all the way round the edge of the batten. We're going to be using roughly a 200mm strip of EPDM tape as a soaker, and this is going to cover the batten and come down roughly 30mm onto the final plank that you've installed. First things first, we're going to put our piece of plank up to where our mark is. We're going to leave our credit card size gap at this end. Take our nail gun and drive it home. Then we're going to take our piece of EPDM tape, tuck it in the back. Obviously, when we put it on here, we want to make sure that it covers all of the batten, but that it doesn't actually stick out the bottom of the piece of plank that we're installing. This is basically just to stop the rainwater from running down the back, and it runs down the front face of the piece of plank. Ensure that our plank is obviously lined up with our mark. Make sure that this covers all of the batten. Here. Take the nail gun and again fix it in place. When putting your joints on the building, make sure that you stagger your joints throughout the elevation, and at no point do you have a zipper effect going down either end of the building. So to summarise, HardiePlank must always be stored correctly in order to protect it from the elements. You must always check beforehand before installing to see if the wall that you are fitting plank on needs a membrane. Make sure there's correct ventilation at both the top and bottom, and above and below both doors and windows. Make sure that you have adjusted your nail gun correctly in order to strike the nail flush. Stagger the butt joints across the elevation in order to avoid repetition. Make sure that the clearances are in accordance with local regulations and James Hardie's best practices. When cutting James Hardie products with a high-speed saw, always ensure that you're cutting outside in a well-ventilated space and wearing the appropriate safety clothing, which includes an FFP2 respirator. Well, that's it. You've got all the information you need now on how to install James Hardie products both efficiently and correctly. If you need any further help, James Hardie's team are just a phone call away.